Hello. In this video, I'm going to be going over the process of submitting social meal expense receipts. This will be used for both the reimbursement and the ProCard process, um, with small variations between ProCard and reimbursements, which I'll go over in other videos. So really, this is just talking about how to submit social meal expense receipts properly in Workday. So the first thing we're going to do is go to one.woostel.edu. And I do recommend that you bookmark this page. This one.woostel.edu is kind of a hub for all the online resources for WashU. You can bookmark by using your star here. And then whenever you open up a new window, you'll have that link there. So, excuse me, using the using the one.woostel.edu link, we go to our Workday login. You can search for it here. And of course, I have it favorited as well. So it always shows up once I've logged in here. And that brings me into Workday. Once I'm in Workday, I'm going to go into create a new expense report. Now, I've mentioned in other videos, but I'll mention it again here. The easiest way to get to the expense report is by going to this expenses hub. I have it here in my top apps, which just shows the top 4 apps in your apps list. If you want to see your full apps list, you can click this view all apps, or you can click this menu button up here. That brings up your apps. I may have a lot more than you, considering my security is a little different than yours, being that I'm in the accounting office, but this expenses hub is right here. And if it's not at the very top and you'd like it to be so that it shows up in your top apps, you can always click this edit button, and then you can drag and drop these and move them around. So whatever the top 4 apps that are listed here, those are the 4 that will be listed down here in your top apps section. So then you can save your changes, and then you exit out of that, and now it'll be down here. You might need to refresh the screen if you just changed it. So you go into your expenses hub, and that brings up this screen here. Now, there are a lot of different things here, but the main thing we're going to look at is this tasks area, create expense report. So we're going to go into here, and we're going to create our new expense report. Now, of course, here you're going to have your name listed. You're going to be creating a new expense report. Again, the required parts of the expense report are this memo section. You're going to leave the company alone. Don't edit the expense report date, and please don't change the company on expense line. The business purposes will either be travel related or it will be non-travel expenses. In this case, we're going to call this non-travel expenses. We're going to assume that our social meal happened here in St. Louis. Then you can also change your account. If you're unsure of your account, you can always contact us in the office. Meredith Guger or Kim Anderson or myself, John Foudy, are always available to help you track down the account information that you need to get things properly processed. So for the memo, once again, memos should be something kind of short and sweet, but also descriptive. It shouldn't be so short that it's a duplicate of every other memo you've ever put in. So it shouldn't just say expense report or meals. It should say something like social meal to welcome this guest in for an event on this date. Something to that effect. So whatever your reason is for the social meal, you want to put into here. I'm just going to do this really quickly and say test social meal, just so that I can recognize what this expense report is later when I go in and delete it later. So we click OK. And of course, if you had a Pro card, you'd be able to add it, but that's a different process, which I'm sure you're aware of as a Pro card holder. So as a reimbursement, we're going to go right in here to the Create Expense Report section. You can see, again, in this top red bar, you can see what you're doing here. So you are now creating the expense report. The first thing we have to do is add a new line. Now, when we add a new line, we're usually just going to have a new line pop up, but because I have multiple options here, it gives me the show drop down. If you don't have multiple options, it'll automatically create a new expense line here. Now, once again, I'm just going to give you a quick synopsis of the screen. It's broken into 3 parts. This top section, which is a summary of what's on the report. This left-hand bar here, or this column, which is where you'll have your individual lines, where you can add more than one receipt to your expense report. In this case, we've got one line highlighted here, and then this is the details for that line. It's blank because I haven't entered anything into this section, but once I enter some information in here and then click this line, it'll pull the information in and update it. So the first thing we're going to do here as a required part of the uploading information for the line is to grab a receipt. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to grab an example, this Idara proposal 4323. So we're going to open that up attach it there. All right, so now I do have that over here. You could also drag and drop items in. You don't have to click the upload button and manually select. If you have it all ready to go, you can just grab something from here. So I want to show you as an example, this is the receipt that I just uploaded. And you can see that this shows the details of the social event. This is actually a catered event that happened on a specific date. There were 20 meals purchased, so there were 20 people, as well as alcohol in the amount of $500 for those 20 people, $25 per person. It was 30, discounted down to 25. And then we've got our total here. We can see that we had sales tax that was charged. So there's a number of things on this expense report that are on this receipt, which could cause some issues. On first pass, I will say that if you just get this uploaded, we can try and work with you to work out which things need to be broken out where, but I'm going to go through all these just so you know what to look for. The one thing that this is missing, excuse me, the one thing that this is missing is actual proof of payment, and that's because this is just the invoice or the contract, the event contract is showing us how much we're going to be paying for these meals. And it breaks everything down, which is great. It gives us all the details. It shows who we're ordering from. It shows the date of the event. But as you might remember from other videos, the 5 parts of a receipt are who we're buying from, the date of the transaction, which isn't even really this. April 30th is the date of the event, but it's not necessarily when we were charged anything. We also need to have line item details, which we do have here. And we need the dollar amounts, which we have here, $1,200 and $500, plus additional fees and taxes, etc. So we can see our estimated amount due is here. And finally, proof of payment. So those are the 5 parts of a valid receipt, according to WashU policy. Now, that, of course, isn't all here. So I would not be able to submit this expense report with just that one item. I would have to go in and find some additional documentation, which, of course, I have right here. For this example, you can see I have a receipt of payment in the amount of $224.04. So it was actually not a full payment that I was making this transaction for. It was actually just the $224.04, the deposit that was due. So I'm not processing this expense report for the entire amount. I'm only going to do it for the $224.04, which the receipt of which is right here. So we can see how much I paid. We can see the transaction date. We can see who it was that we paid, Adara. We can see the date of the transaction was April 30th. So the only thing that this is now missing is line item details. So we have to use both of these documents together in order to constitute a full receipt. This by itself also would not do, because we need to be able to see the breakdown of how much was alcohol, how much was sales tax, etc., because all those go into different budgets in our budgeting system. So I will additionally add this receipt to the transaction. And once again, we can see here, this was charged on April 30th. So the next thing here is to change this, to change the date to April 30th, 2023. And then the expense item here is going to be, it could be a number of things here you might do. In this case, technically, I would choose catering, or I could choose, I believe, deposit is also an option, deposit, security deposit, rental deposits, things like that when you're dealing with events. But for the purposes of this example, I'm going to call this social, which is technically an okay expense item to use for this transaction. Now, once you bring up expense item, that automatically populates these additional fields down here, the quantity and the per unit amount, which we are going to basically ignore. We're always going to count one receipt or one transaction line means quantity 1. We're not going to try and break this down and say, there were 20 20 people at this dollar amount. We're not, that's not how we're entering in these receipts. It's really just one receipt or one transaction with multiple receipts in this case, but we're just going to leave that as a 1. What we can do is we can come in here and we can edit this to be the $224.04, since that's the amount of the transaction. And of course, the cost that we were charging, or whatever the account that we were charging, would have been chosen on the last page, but we can also edit it here in case it is different. And then the other things popped up is this item details. So whenever we choose social and entertainment purchases and supplies, and that's note, please, that when you type in social, it brings up this list. Please don't choose social and entertainment expenses services. That is a different expense item. We do not want to use that when we're paying for meals and alcohol, etc. You also don't need to break out tips and gratuities. This is only when you're only going to use that when the entire expense is just for a tip or gratuity. But because we're going to be adding in those things on many receipts, you don't need to break it out. It's just part of the social expense. So we use social and entertainment expenses, purchases and supplies. And when we choose that, it does bring up this additional set of fields over here. And while they don't have a red asterisk, these actually are required fields. So please keep that in mind. So when at this point, we need to ask ourselves a question. And that question is what I call, does this fall into the 12-13 rule, 12/13? That rule states that on a social meal expense, which is basically when you have at least yourself and one other person that's non-WashU related, paying for, where WashU is paying for that meal, you need to ask yourself, are there 12 or fewer attendees, or are there 13 or more attendees? Now, in this case, we know we have 20 people at a buffet dinner, so the answer to that question is more. We have 13 or more attendees. So we would just put in the number of persons at 20, and then we're done. The business topic we could put in here. It's not actually required, I don't believe, but it's good to try and put in some kind of information here. What this event was for. I'm actually not even sure what this event was for since it was a few months ago. So I'm going to leave it blank for this example, but that's what that rule states is 12-13 rule is 13 or more people. You just put the approximate number of people or the exact number of people if you have it. The 12-13 rule also states that if you have 12 or fewer attendees, then you need to list each individual attendee name, which you would do in this list here. This ends up popping open. You can search for attendees. Every employee in Workday is available to search in here. And if you have guests that are non-WashU people, you can create a guest. I'm going to show you what that looks like in just a moment here. So first, I'm going to click this line over here to pull in the information. And now we've got our summary of those details here on the line. I'm going to add a new expense, a new social expense here, and I'm going to grab a different transaction. We've got this one here where there were 4 attendees. So I'm not going to drag it in quite yet. But we do have the names of the attendees. We have Alexandra, Derek, Stephen, and Irene. And so because that falls in, I'm going to drag and drop it in here. So now we've got our receipt there. We do all the other steps too. This was on 2/27/22. I'm using some old receipts here, but this is just for the example, so we'll get it right. 2/27/22. And the expense item again is going to be social and entertainment expenses, purchases, and supplies. Once again, it pops open these additional fields, but we're just going to put in the total amount. Total amount on this one was $257. So we put that right here, 257, and I just hit tab, and that automatically converts my per unit amount to equal 257 since we have a quantity of 1. And now, because we have 4 attendees here, we know we just have these 4 people, we need to add those names into here. So what you can do is I just kind of set this thing over here on the side so I can still see the names. And you can do this however you need to, but you can just type in the names of the attendees. We've got Derek. Oh, it's not going to come up. There we go, Derek and Stephen. Oh, and of course I'm not there. Oh, I'm not sure which Stephen D this is. I'm gonna leave that one alone for now. I'm gonna add my name back in just for this example. And the last one would be Irene. All right, so we have the 4 people attending. That automatically changed the number of persons here. We do actually have the note on here. This is MLA faculty candidate. So there was a dinner there for the candidate. Dinner. So you just put in that information there. And then once again, we can click our line over there and that pulls in the information. Now, again, we might be charging these 2 events to different accounts. So down here at the bottom, you could just scroll down. You can change each one individually based on, based on what account was going to be picking up the social meal expense for that one. So that is how we process those 2 different things. Now, there's additional things to know about on these. I did go over earlier on this other line that we have. Oops, wrong receipt here. We have sales tax, and we also have alcohol. In this case, since it was just a 10% deposit, we weren't actually paying for tax or alcohol or fuel. It was just a straight social meal expense. When we come down to the final invoice, they would take out that $224.04 and they would say, here's what the final bill is, and then we would break out all of these dollar amounts. So I'm not going to do it on that one, but on this one, we do have 2 receipts here, and you can see that we have one that has all the details, line item details. It does show, the name of the restaurant. It shows the date of the transaction, etc. So, and it shows, proof of payment here is Visa credit. So we have actual transaction type. That information makes this a valid receipt. Now, on this detailed receipt, you can see that there was tax charged, which brought the total to $240.16, but $217 was the pre-tax amount, and that's all we were actually charged when the credit card sale happened. So they removed the sales tax for us, and then there was a $40 tip. But there was also alcohol. Now, whenever you have alcohol, you are required to break it out. This is on individual meals. This is on social meals. So make sure to break those things out. In this case, what I always ask is that you highlight the lines. And this is, with a PDF editor, we highlighted these lines here, or you can put a little, A next to each of the lines that have alcohol, or put a star or something. And if you actually total it up and write it off to the side, that's really handy as well. Just so when we're processing these, it's kind of easy to go back through and add things up and make sure the math was done right and we have the right amounts. Now, in this case, I've already done all this work. I would really appreciate it if you could do that before uploading the receipts. That just makes our lives easier and our jobs a little less stressful each day. So in this case, we have $83 for our alcohol breakout. So the way we're going to break that out is by using this itemization button down here. So under itemization, which should only be used, I might add, when you need to break out expenses. You shouldn't just itemize every single expense, because what happens when you click this itemize button is it brings up the same line here. We have $257 as our charge, and we're going to break out $83. I believe it was $83. Yes, $83. And then we're going to change the expense item to alcohol. And when you type in alcohol, it brings up travel or non-travel. Since this was local, it's non-travel. And now we have $174 left out of that $257 to itemize, because we just put $83 over here. So if we come down here and click add, now we have a new line with all the same details and information, but now we have 0 amount and we've got 174 left, and it's back to social and entertainment. So we change this to 174. And now there's 0 remaining to itemize. And then we click done. So now we have this little itemized line down here. We've taken our receipt of $257 and we've broken it out into 2 different line items with different expense lines. But notice what you've done here is you've removed the account information from here. So the problem when you click this itemize button and you're not actually itemizing anything, it's just a single line that's being charged to social and there's nothing split, then all you're doing is you're hiding this account information behind an extra button that I have to go in and look at in order to see what account you're charging. So please only click that itemize button if you actually have to split things out into multiple categories. If you ever accidentally click that and you realize you didn't need to, you can always click edit again and just click this trash can and then click done, and that'll delete the itemization and it'll bring the account information back out to here. So that is pretty much it. An additional thing you could do if this social expense had been charged, since it's in St. Louis in Missouri and we got charged sales tax, if this $23.16 was included in our transaction here, When we go in here, that's another thing you could itemize out. And we do require you to itemize sales tax when you're charged sales tax in Missouri. So that would be a third line. If there was alcohol and social meal and sales tax, it would just be 3 different splits over here. So I hope that all made sense. If you have any questions about any of this, I do encourage you to contact our office. Myself and Kim Anderson are always available to help answer questions when you have them. I hope you have a good day. Thanks so much.